Jesus God, man, this fucking stream is terrible.
Hi, my name is Hannah, and I'm here to show you how students can use Otter to make lectures and campus events more accessible and inclusive.
Simply weren't enough hours in the day to get it all done, let alone do any of it well, let alone to enjoy any of it along the way. And I wanted more time, not just so I could get more done, I wanted more time so that I could slow down and actually experience the hours that I was spending, so that my entire life wouldn't end up passing me by in this blur. I know now that what I was experiencing is time poverty, which is defined as the acute feeling of having too much to do and not enough time to do it. Even if you haven't heard this term before, I suspect you know exactly what I'm talking about. Show of hands, how many of you agree with this statement, I never seem to have enough time to get everything done? A lot of us. And we're not alone. My research team conducted a national poll that showed that nearly half of Americans feel this way. And it's not just us in the US. Folks across the globe report suffering from a hectic pace of life with too little time. And on that night on the train, when I felt very time poor and not happy, I concluded that there was one obvious solution. I needed to quit my job and move to a sunny island somewhere, right? Because with all the hours of my days to relax and spend doing what I wanted, then surely I'd be happier. But then I was like, is that true? Are people who have a whole lot more time, in fact, happier? And this is an empirical question and one that I could test and probably should test before telling my boss that I quit and my
Yeah, it sounds quaint. Sounds nice. What's up, Mikey? Spooky, good to see you. Ooh, that smell. Can't you smell that smell?
husband that we should pack for life at the beach. So I recruited a couple of my favorite collaborators, and together we examined what's the relationship between the amount of discretionary time people have and their happiness. And across our studies, including an analysis of the American Time Use Survey, which captures how tens of thousands of working as well as non-working Americans spent a regular day, we found a consistent pattern of results. And it looked like this. It was an upside down U shape, like an arc or a rainbow. Now, this is interesting because it shows that happiness goes down on both ends of the spectrum. Yes, people with too little time, those with less than approximately 2 hours of discretionary time in the day, were less happy. But this didn't surprise me because I knew all about the high level of stress that comes from being time poor. It was this other side that was surprising. Those with more than approximately 5 hours of discretionary time in the day We're also less happy. And this is interesting because it shows there is such thing as having too much time. But how could that be, right? How could having loads of hours to relax and spend however you want to be associated with less happiness? Well, it turns out we are driven to be at least a little productive. Research shows that people are averse to being idle. And so when we spend all the hours of the day in and day out, with nothing to show for it, it undermines our sense of purpose. And from that, we feel less satisfied. This is important to note because it cautions us on those days that feel so hectic. The answer isn't to quit everything and move to life, sitting in a beach chair. These results point to something else that's interesting too. Namely, if we could just get to having 2 hours in the day to spend however we wanted, we'd reach that sweet spot for happiness. Now, I will admit that at first I'm like, 2 discretionary hours? That's like an unreachable luxury. But then when I did an honest accounting of my days, I realized that the target 2 hours wasn't totally out of reach. Even during that hectic period of my life, I'd get to spend 15 minutes in the morning snuggling with my little one, 25 minutes talking to my best friend on my commute home from work, 30 minutes enjoying dinner and a glass of wine with my husband, and then 20 minutes singing my baby to sleep. This amounted to 90 minutes that I wouldn't have wanted to spend in any other way. And it wasn't until I did this calculation that I realized just how joyful so many of my minutes already were. And so altogether, what this research shows us is that the answer for greater happiness isn't really about having more time available. It's really about how we invest the time that we have. For happiness, it's not about becoming time rich. It's about making the time we have rich. But how? How do we make our time rich? Instead of quitting, I redirected my research agenda to answer this very question. How do we spend our time to experience greater joy during our days, and so that at the end of our years, we can look back without regret? And what I have learned is that time isn't the problem. It can be the solution. Because how we dedicate our day's hours can have a tremendous impact on the satisfaction we feel in and about our lives. And it doesn't require any drastic life-altering changes. With just a little bit of intention and attention, we can choose to be happier.
That sounds so great. Just right now, I'm just gonna choose to be happier. I can't keep commuting 2 to 5 hours. No, don't do that. That doesn't make sense. Like, if I have to commute more than 30 minutes, you're probably gonna have to compensate me for my time. That's just, I mean, I know I'm spoiled brat, whatever, but it's like that's actually what, most people around these parts consider reasonable. Um, no, 2 to 5 hours is not reasonable. And if you're spending that much time commuting, I mean, at least do like I did. When I was riding the bus, I would at least be live streaming from the bus during my commute. As give me some me time, because I don't need to just be like sitting in traffic being miserable. Um, but yeah, no, I wouldn't do that if I could avoid it.
As a first step, we need to identify and protect time for those activities that are truly worthwhile, those activities that are fulfilling, that align with our values and purpose. One way to identify these activities is through time tracking. Over the course of a week, write down for each half hour what you did and rate on a 10-point scale how you felt coming out of that activity. Something else you can do is to simply reflect. And you can actually do this right now. So Think back over your last few weeks. What were those times that made you feel the greatest joy? When I reflect back,
Sex. I think the number one answer should be sex. No? Am I okay? I'm sorry. I jumped the gun there.
my coffee dates with my daughter Lita stand out. Now, mind you, this is an activity that was born out of a very functional routine. Every Thursday since she was little, on my way to drop her at her preschool and me to my office, I wanted coffee, clearly. So we'd stop at the local coffee shop. And soon enough, this mindless routine transformed into this treasured and highly anticipated ritual. We have a
Okay, so it's not sex and the product of sex. I mean, either way, sex was involved. I mean, okay. I was close, right?
have a coffee date playlist and everything. Each week, this is a blissful half hour that we get to spend together, chatting, munching on Nutella croissants, her drinking her hot chocolate, me my flat white. It's time for just the two of us. And yes, this is a very regular activity that is special to me. But the specialness of such regular activities is not an anomaly. In my research across lots of people, we find that those activities that produce the greatest happiness are often remarkably mundane. And you might have noticed that too when I just had you think about your most joyful activities. They were probably pretty ordinary. And this is important to note because since these activities are so ordinary, when we're
I like long walks on the beach, watching the sun go down, reading a good book.
in a rush, when we feel time poor, we're very quick to neglect these activities. Or even if we make the time, we're rushing through them. Or we're distracted on our phones or in our heads, cycling through our to-do list, thinking about and planning for what's next. But to be fair, it's easy to miss these moments because we've gotten used to them. We've gotten so used to these simple joys that we barely even notice them anymore. And this is due to hedonic adaptation, which is our psychological propensity to get used to things over time. And so when you do the same thing again and again, when you're with the same person again and again, they stop having as intense of an emotional impact on you. Now, it's good that we are adaptive in the face of negative circumstances. Hedonic adaptation helps us manage through those tough times. It makes us resilient. But it's bad that we also get used to life's good stuff. For example, think back to the very first time someone you really cared about said, "I love you." It's like fireworks in your mind and your heart. And then a few years on, "I love you" gets reduced to "love you" as you're hanging up the phone or heading out the door. And if something as profound and wonderful as the declaration of love gets reduced to a couple words that you barely even hear, that shows the power of hedonic adaptation. And it shows that we need to be careful and aware of it so that we can offset it and continue to feel the happiness from life's joys. One way to offset hedonic adaptation is to count your times left. Just because it's an everyday activity now, it doesn't mean it's going to continue to happen every day, and certainly not like it does now. So for instance, with my coffee dates with little Lita, I counted. As a first step, I calculated how many times have we done this in the past. So including our daily coffee dates during my maternity leave with her, and then our weekly ones since, I calculated that Lita and I have gone on approximately 400 coffee dates together. Now, the next step is to calculate how many times left do you have to do this activity in the future, accounting for factors that will likely change. So Lita is now 8. When she turns 12, I suspect she'll prefer to go to the coffee shop with her friends instead of me. So it'll be less frequent. And then she's going to go off to college. And then she's going to move to New York if she's anything like I was. So with that, I calculated that Lita and I have 230 coffee dates in the future. Now,
Don't be a pessimist. Maybe your child will have like some kind of traumatic accident that will force her to stay at home. She'll never leave state, never go to college. You'll get to have coffee with her every day, maybe multiple times a day. How do I watch my donkey? I'm a simple man. I have to do it one hand at a time. Oh,
the last step, calculating of the total times, what percentage do you have left? From this, I realized Lita and I have approximately 36% of our coffee dates together left. That's much less than half, and she's only 8 years old.
A CRM shouldn't weigh your budget down.
Now, at first, this might seem sad, and you might be wondering to yourself, I thought this lady was a happiness professor, so why is she making me cry? But I can assure you that the effects of this exercise are really positive and impactful, because recognizing the preciousness of these times motivates us to make the time. No matter how busy I am, I absolutely carve out and protect time for my weekly coffee dates with Lita. And yes, they used to be on Thursday mornings on the way to preschool, but now she's in elementary school, which starts way too early. So our Thursday morning coffee dates happen on the weekend. But that's fine, because we still spend the time. As important as making the time is how engaged we are during these times, right? Having counted, I made darn sure to put my phone away, to quiet that to-do list that otherwise is constantly running in my head, because I know.
made darn sure. Do you think she talks like that in real life? What's up, John Hudson? Good to see you. Yeah, doing well over here. We're trying to find the key to happiness, the philosophy for a better life.
Know that I cannot be distracted from this moment, thinking about and planning for what's next, because this is the time that matters. And also, this is only 30 minutes each week, but these minutes color how I feel the rest of the week, and really how I feel about my life overall. Not only do I feel happy during these dates, but I feel happy beforehand as I look forward to them. I feel happy afterwards as I think back and remember them. When I'm assessing my satisfaction with my life overall, these minutes and the resulting connection and relationship that I have with my daughter have a huge effect. I can honestly say now that despite still having that high-pressure job and husband, and now 2 kids instead of 1, and that never-ending pile of chores, that I am happy. And this touches back to what I said before.
Now she has a second child. Why would you do that to your first kid? You had all these precious moments with your first kid. You couldn't even keep up with that. You had to like do the logistics on time tracking your coffee dates, and now you're like having a second kid. I don't know. It seems highly irresponsible to me.
it comes to happiness, it's not about the quantity of time we have available. It's about the quality, how we invest the time that we have, and how invested we are while spending that time. With just a little intention and attention, we can find extraordinary happiness in ordinary moments. Thank you.
I guess she might have a point there. I don't know.
All for one.
Hope y'all are having a beautiful Saturday afternoon. Just afternoon now. 12:22. West Coast time. Smiling in the sun.
Philosophical speculation concerning the nature of the cosmos and our place in it has a long pedigree dating back to human prehistory. Throughout the history of philosophy, some of the greatest minds have speculated about the origins of philosophy itself. Philosophize. The Greek philosopher Aristotle has suggested that it is owing to their wonder that humans first began to philosophize. If I may generalize here, this position suggests that philosophy stems from a sort of natural curiosity. Like a newborn puppy, humans tentatively explore their surroundings by chewing on every object that they come across and incessantly find new places to defecate. This curiosity is thrust into a world that, frankly, does not make much sense. Parents of newborns are not presented with a how-to guide, and adults are not given a user manual on life. As a result, we are intrinsically motivated motivated to leaving our mother's side, we venture out in search of new smelly toys and tasty treats. Approaching the universe with a deep sense of wonder and curiosity is a beautiful.
The way you just worded that was beautiful. Well, thank you for listening. I'm listening while I'm doing something else. But I'm also right here. Let's see if this will buffer out for us. Might not. It might just be stuck like this. Like my face. Damn it, Jim.
Beautiful starting place for philosophy, but it also paints a very romanticized picture of the philosophical enterprise. The lone philosopher toiling away in her study, quietly trying to unravel the mysteries of the universe. This picture of philosophy brings with it a lot of assumptions about the sorts of conditions which are needed for such wondering to occur. On this note, the philosopher Thomas Hobbes explains in his Leviathan that, quote, leisure is the mother of philosophy. The truth of what Hobbes is saying here is pretty straightforward. Even if academics aren't always quick to admit it, there are some basic material conditions which are a prerequisite to engaging with intellectual or artistic enterprises. This is perhaps most concisely articulated by the psychologist Abraham Maslow in his description of human motivation. We are
Excuse me, Maslow is actually a pretty smart dude. Should make sense.
all motivated to seek some sort of fulfillment in our life. According to Maslow, the highest level of this fulfillment includes things like aesthetic creativity and self-actualization or transcendence. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is often presented as a ladder or a pyramid because there are certain basic needs which are required in order for us to reach those higher needs. Subsequently, human physiological needs such as food, water, and shelter are the most prepotent of all of these needs, says Maslow. That is to say, quote, a person who is lacking food, safety, love, and esteem would most probably hunger for food more strongly than for anything else.
I mean, and in other words, they're fucked. They're fucked, right? I mean, if they got that's all, love is all you need. If you ain't got love, then you're fucked. Something like that. I don't know. Do without it.
Having the time to sit around and wonder assumes a certain level of financial stability. It's extremely difficult to ponder the origins of the universe when the sounds of your stomach speak louder than the words in your head. The philosopher in this Hobbesian view is a well cared for child. They benefit from the warmth, security, and financial means of their parents. The inquisitive toddler plays with the Platonic forms with a sense of innocence and carefreeness. It is a bright and colorful toy, maybe even one of their favorites. But if the toy gets lost or damaged, they would simply replace it with another one.
Beep, motherfucker. Sanity for a better life. Right, just shaking off them, please.
Miss your love, what's come over me? Hostages of geography. Wait is long, heavy too, spite what you're accustomed to. Life moves on, that's what scares me so. No intentions of letting go. Oh,
Wise concentration. The final aspect of the Eightfold Path is wise concentration. Meditation practice begins with concentrating on the breath, the body, the emotional tone of the moment, and the processes of the mind, because these things exist in the present moment. If we focus on breath, for example, we're paying attention to the present moment because our breathing is immediate. It's happening right now. Breathing is a natural process that doesn't require judgment or interpretation, and so it eases the mind from the need to react. The purpose of concentration is to train the mind to be focused and undistracted. Most of us, early in meditation practice, are distracted by things around us, like a noise outside the room, pain or discomfort in our bodies, our own worries or judgments of the experience, boredom or weariness, or thoughts and plans. These distractions can lead to a feeling of unease or restlessness. This is perfectly normal. In our addictions, we nurtured the habit of distracting ourselves, and for many of us, it became a survival technique. Concentration meditation gives us the opportunity to meet this habit with kindness and patience rather than resistance. Like the rest of the factors of the Eightfold Path, is a practice. As with any practice, it takes time and effort to learn a new way to focus attention. In meditation, simply noting the distraction, accepting that it exists, and then refocusing our mind back to the object of concentration is a practice. If we become focused on discomfort, thoughts, or plans, we need to first recognize what's happening and then become curious about it. Then we can make the choice to refocus, to concentrate on the object of the meditation. Our habitual patterns can seduce us into thinking we're doing it wrong, into judging our practice, or into giving up. Don't let them. When we observe what the mind is telling us and react with compassion, knowing we have the power to recognize it and refocus it, we strengthen our ability to concentrate.
After all, there are entire stores and warehouses filled with these toys, and the child has a wide selection of playthings. Some of us, sadly, had much different childhoods under afforded by leisure. The opposing maternal figure, one which presents a not so peaceful place to start philosophy, is survival. To quote Albert Camus, there is but one truly philosophical problem, and that is suicide. The opening lines of Camus' The Myths of Sisyphus are intentionally striking and meant to be jarring. You see, a lot had changed in history and philosophy from the time of Aristotle and Hobbes. Hobbes was well aware that violence and cruelty were a part of the human condition. After all, he became known for his pessimistic view of human nature. Yet even Hobbes could not anticipate the horrors of the first half of the 20th century. World War I and World War II brought with them catastrophic loss of life and unimaginable levels of human suffering. For Camus, writing in the wake of World War I and in the midst of World War II, philosophy is more than a genteel game of a child. Indeed, philosophy is of existential consequence for the individual. Another development at the turn of the 20th century, one that is considerably less dramatic than war, was the hyperspecialization of academic philosophy. In short, philosophy became more academic and as a result, removed from the experience of the person on the street. With Camus, there's an attempt on some level to refocus. Part of Camus' reorientation is to suggest that philosophical investigation doesn't have to begin with wonder or leisure, but can rather stem from survival. Most people probably can't parse out the difference.
Now I just feel bad because I think I've been mispronouncing this guy's name for years. Concentrate on that, you mooks.
Difference between A theory and B theory of time, but everyone has experienced time. Most people are probably not aware of the logical arguments for the existence of God, but a lot of people have mused about the nature of the divine with a friend over their
Oh no, of course, I received a text. They sent me this link, and I was like, pretty sure I make too much money for that. They were like, you don't make too much money for that. I sent you links to the individual apartment complex that is based on rent income. This person is obviously using some kind of fuck the text. I don't know. I can't translate. It's not English.
Your favorite beverage. Most people probably can't articulate the difference between natural or supernatural approaches to the meaning in life, but every person who watches this video has a reason why they continue to survive. Philosophy is not always birthed in the ivory towers of your local university's campus or the dead pages of a dusty journal tucked away on the floor of a university library. Sometimes philosophy is birthed in the midst of the smell of bodily fluids, covered in blood and screaming as the reality of existence pierces its lungs for the first time.
It's just super dark, but bodily fluids are blood. Blood is bodily fluids. That's part of the same. They're all okay. Maybe I'm just being pedantic here, but
All of us, regardless of socioeconomic status, ethnic background, or nationality, will struggle in some way to come to terms with our own existence. We all have the psychological impulse, the biological drive to survive. Yet, there is more to survival than basic biology. The question that we as survivors are confronted with is a deceptively simple one. Why? This why is the beginning of philosophy. Aristotle may be right after all, because this question stems from a sort of natural curiosity. But it is a curiosity in response to some of our most painful experiences. This is not the leisurely contemplation of the solitary philosopher reclining in her study. No. This is the cry of the grieving mother who has just lost her baby and is greeted for the first time with the gentle indifference of the world. This is the rage of the young man who hears the scream, "Put your hands on the steering wheel," as the officer takes a step back and puts their hand on the gun. This is the confusion of the teenager who has never felt at home in their own body, while their pain is amplified by talking heads and politicians.
actually on point. Yeah. That's what we're talking about.
Debating their existence. Philosophy to counter Aristotle and Hobbes can also be born out of survival. Philosophy is intellectual combat. Time I am, spoke Lord Krishna to Arjuna on the battlefield, the great destroyer of worlds, and I have come here to destroy all people. Our opponent is a tenacious one and undefeated. An ineffable monstrosity has been sweeping across the mass of humanity since our beginning, claiming everyone in its path. Philosophy, in this view, becomes the struggle to the death against this inevitability, however short that struggle may be. Philosophy begins with our first attempts to grapple with this absurdity. There is a sense of defiance present here, choosing life in all its complexity, pain, and despair. Everyone who watches this has then, on some level, waded into the philosophical fray. Philosophy is birthed by survival as we choose to persevere in this universe that seems hostile to our existence. In our choice to live, we have also begun our philosophical journey by investigating the first and most important question in the entirety of human existence: why?
You prick. Made me cry.
All right, welcome to another episode of Genuine Truth. I'm the captain of this ship, Robert motherfucking Reed. I got a tumble full of Hendrix and mindful of thoughts. Let's go.
Far too long.
Before I lose my place.
Far too long, and I do not have enough time. Obviously, time management is one of my stronger suits, so. I should have bought Julie's meatloaf. So darn good. Ready now? We're ready.
with insisting that apartheid has to be federal, partially because the federal government presumes that you have a federal level of government, which involves a federation of smaller units, right? Last time I checked, the U.S. Supreme Court, whose infamous 1896 ruling in Plessy versus Ferguson confirmed state laws enforcing segregation was a federal institution. But assuming for the sake of argument that Bonnell's points about travel and federal edicts are correct, are these in any way relevant? Here is how the International Criminal Court, the ICC, defines apartheid, which it classifies as a crime against humanity. By the way, before I continue into this, the reason why I bring this up is because it would be a very perverse thing to argue that in the event that there is simply an overarching governmental structure, that therefore it's not apartheid because there's an overarching governmental structure that doesn't necessarily ratify it. That's not very compelling. Quote, let me give.
And no, yeah, it's not. That's actually a poor argument. So yeah, I've only got a few minutes left here. So I'll finish this video from Sunday, which obviously will be well articulated. It'd be just genius, and then we'll bid each other adieu here.
Give the context again. Here's how the ICC defines apartheid, which it classifies as a crime against humanity. Quote, apartheid, an institutionalized regime of systematic oppression and domination by one racial group over any other racial group or groups, and committed with the intention of maintaining that regime, unquote. Seems the ICC didn't get Bonnell's memo about travel and federal regulations in time to incorporate them into the Rome Statute. They're probably doing it all on Commodore 64s too. Point in this regard, which specifically concerns Palestinian refugees. If, in his view, Jim Crow did not constitute apartheid, why does he insist that Arab states exercising their universally recognized sovereign right to not extend collective citizenship rights to refugees in their territory are guilty of a crime against humanity? End. I love this man. I love this man so much. Oh, I love this. Look. Can you talk about how he said if Israel dropped a nuclear bomb and killed the 2 million Gazans, it wouldn't be genocide? You touched on this briefly, but I want to see a thread dedicated to this absurd statement. I think it speaks for itself and doesn't require further comment. Oh. Oh, what is this?
I'm so mad. I want to talk to me.
How true, Mr. Bonnell, how true.
So that was pretty disturbing. That was actually very disturbing. It's right at the end. But that's none of my business. I'll just mind my own business over here in my little corner of the internet. Concentration can be especially helpful in times of craving. Instead of getting lost in the delusion that we must have what we're craving, we can trust that the craving is only temporary and refocus our attention on our intention to act wisely. This may simply be the 3-breath pause mentioned earlier, or a more formal sitting meditation concentrating on the breath. We can use concentration meditation to train our minds to focus on a helpful thought in the midst of temporary discomfort and the yearning for a quick fix. This may take the form of repeated phrases to focus and clear the mind, such as metta, compassion, or equanimity meditations. It could also take the form of prayer, chanting, self-affirmation, a mantra, or another form of focused attention. Concentration practices can often bring a sense of well-being and peace in time of turmoil. They're a healthy way to return to a balanced, resilient state when stressed or agitated. Sometimes when cravings or unpleasant emotions are particularly strong, moving the body can be the best way to help refocus our energy and find relief. Concentration at those times may mean being focused and mindful about each movement we are making. This is my foot taking a step. This is my hand reaching for the cup. After a few minutes of concentration practice, of not giving energy to our craving or obsession, we may find the intensity of the feeling has passed. The more we do this, the more we gain confidence that we have the power to relieve the suffering of our addiction through following this path and committing to this practice. For trauma survivors, the breath, the heart, and the mind can be potentially overwhelming places to place the attention. So if traditional anchors like breath and body are challenging, ask yourself, what helps you stay present? What helps to calm your nervous system? It might be the feeling of the floor beneath you, or holding a stone, or looking at a piece of art on the wall. All that you need to be present is to pay attention to something happening right now. If you feel powerful emotions begin to arise during meditation, there are some simple things you can do to remain present. For example, you can open your eyes rather than keeping them closed, or give yourself permission to back off from the practice you are working on. Do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself, should such a state arise. Whether that is taking some deep breaths, putting a name on your experience, such as a flashback, or silently repeating some compassionate phrases to yourself. Learning to turn our attention back and forth between challenging sensations and our own supportive resources is a valuable skill that professionals call titration. You can be gentle with your practice as you are working to develop this skill. What's up, Speed Romans? Good to see you. Just getting ready to end this little midday stream. Thank you to everybody for coming and checking it out. Not exposing yourself on the internet unless you have an OnlyFans page, in which case, I don't judge you. But not for YouTube, right? Okay. Good night and good luck, everybody. I'll see you soon.
But so many people say that they want to see the light. They want to be enlightened. They want to dissolve into the light of God. Then when they've done that, all over again, the process goes on, and it blows out those mud balls. And here are planets, and here once again, you're a baby. You're a child. The flowers are brilliantly colored. The stars are gorgeous. The smell of the earth, the sound of the rain, everything